Yes, people, wife boy, and for lack of a better word, Pep Guardiola's recent interviews for Manchester City have been explosive. Today I'm breaking down what exactly is going wrong with Manchester City, why I believe Pep Guardiola is actually a little bit frightened of Mikel Arteta, and how I believe the season is going to pan out. As always, if you love football related content, make sure you subscribe down below on my road to 2,000 subscribers, and let me know in the comment section down below who you believe is going to win the Premier League this season. So Pep Guardiola, for, let's be honest, for about 5-6 years now, has been challenging for the Premier League title week in, week out, season in, season out, normally toe-to-toe with Liverpool, but this season he's had to contend with Mikel Arteta and Arsenal. And recently his press conferences have been a little bit weird. He's lost the plot with the fans, he's lost the plot with the players, he's saying they're not hungry, he said his side have won enough, why he questioned how successful they've been. I've never seen him act like this, even at times when he was going right down to the wire with Liverpool. Boiling point, the stress, the pressure. Never really saw him act out of like his normal sense. He was always calm, collected, really positive. But this season, he's taken a bit of a nasty turn as a manager. Some people say it's necessary because his side have not been performing up to the standard. Others say maybe he's lost it mentally a little bit. Maybe him sending players like Zinchenko and Jesus over to Arsenal and see how consistent, how vibrant, how youthful Arsenal have been in comparison to his side, which have looked a little bit old at times, a little bit rigid, not as fluid as they have been in previous seasons. Maybe that's got to him mentally. Maybe the fact that they haven't won a Champions League throughout his tenure at Manchester City has affected Pep Guardiola mentally. There's a lot to talk about. First, I'm going to say that it's a little bit of mind games from Pep Guardiola. I think in his interviews, especially the one after the Tottenham game, where he was saying, oh, the crowd only booings were 2-0 down, but we still played well. Our players aren't hungry. He said something about how they were saying, oh, why aren't we successful? That's BS. We are successful. You don't have to win the Champions League to be successful. It's a little bit of mind games. I think this whole season, Pep Guardiola has tried to be positive with his players, and they, quite frankly, have not been up to it. He's got a world-class squad. He's got an abundance of world-class talent in every single position in that team, yet they're not performing on a consistent basis. He's tried being nice to them. He's tried bigging up his players. I think now he's trying a different technique. I think he's trying to rile his players up, trying to annoy them in ways. But the thing is, I don't think this is the same team he's had with Barcelona. I feel like that Barcelona team had characters, had personalities. It was a cut above this Manchester City team. This Man City team, I don't feel like you can really get at them like you can get the Barca team. When I say get them, I don't mean in a negative context. I mean, he can rile up that Barca team to make them produce results like a machine. He can get into Busquets and tell him, bro, I need you to perform, and he will perform. Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, David Villa, etc. I feel like he can't do that Man City team. I feel like they're not quite the same characters that he had at Barcelona. So if you try and rile him up, I don't think he's going to get as big of a performance or as big as a comeback, as big as of a momentous performance from them like he would under his Barcelona squad. That's my only worry. There's that, and I do think the fact that he's not won a Champions League is affecting him. He can say so many times how the Premier League is the hardest competition to win. It doesn't matter. It doesn't define his success. I honestly believe it does, man. He's only ever won the Champions League with Barcelona. He didn't win it at Bayern Munich. He hasn't won it now for a few seasons. He's been here a good 5-6 seasons with Manchester City and has not won the Champions League either. It's a defining moment. Man City in their history, the one trophy that has escaped them is the Champions League. When Man City inevitably fall off, like Arsenal had done so before this season, like Man United did for a period, like Liverpool did for a period, are we going to look back on Man City and say, wow, in their glory days they won everything? Or are we going to look back at them like how loads of people look back at Arsenal and say, yes, you were brilliant, but you never won the Champions League? I think that is getting to him. I think the fact that he's never won a Champions League without Messi, arguably, let's be honest, right now, the world's greatest player of all time, not winning a Champions League unless he had him, it does affect him. My thing is, right, with Pep Guardiola, he wants to fight on all fronts. And look, he's got no excuse. I know some people say for Arsenal, look, give up on the Europa League, focus on the Premier League, that should be your ambition. And I kind of understand that. For Man City, that should never be an excuse. Their squad is deep enough to compete in all competitions they need to compete in, man. They've got world-class players throughout their squads. Their bench is better than most Premier League clubs. Like, that's just the facts. So I don't want to hear this, people saying he's concentrating on the Champions League. Because their squad is good enough to fight on all fronts. But mentally, is their head on the Champions League? Mentally, are they thinking, is the Champions League what we need to focus on? Mentally, are they already looking at that Leipzig game? I'm not too sure. They brought in Erling Haaland. I said it a few videos ago on this channel, and I've said it honestly from about December 2022. Erling Haaland, week in, week out in the Premier League, is a hindrance. It affects Man City's fluidity. It affects their flow. They can't get into their style as much. They've walked this Premier League title without having a recognised striker like Gabriel Jesus, for example, in there and scoring and netting over 90 points easily. Having Haaland in there game by game in the Premier League, it will affect them over the 38 games, but it was worth the risk because he will make that difference in that one Champions League game. You saw over the past seasons where it'd be that one game that's the reason that City miss out on the Champions League. They just couldn't score a winning goal. And I think Haaland will provide that. He will score those big goals in big moments and potentially be the reason Man City win the Champions League. However, over 38 game stretch in the Premier League, despite all his goals he scores, despite all the momentous things he does on the pitch, besides all his game winners, he can slow down the attack and can slow down Man City's fluidity and can affect their performances. I think he looked at it and thought, you know what? I'm good enough to win this Premier League, even if we're not at it 100% of the games like we were previously. The thing is, he could be sorely mistaken because in other seasons, he would be walking this Premier League and no one would say anything about Haaland, anything. But because Arsenal have been so good this season, it's affecting him mentally because he's thinking, right, I brought Haaland in. He's affecting my team a little bit negatively. We're not playing as good as we were last season. I'm looking over at Arsenal. They look like a team. They look cohesive. They're playing together. They're treating each other like brothers. Like it's a band of brothers over there. He looks at his team and they're like, every game's an exhibition game. They score, they just high five. Yeah, well done. Let's continue. Whereas whenever Arsenal score, it's a huddle, it's a hug. It's like it's a massive goal. They treat every game like a cup final. I think that is getting to him a little bit. But at the end of the day, there's still 20 to 19 games left of this Premier League season. There's ample time for Pep Guardiola to win the Premier League with his Manchester City side, as there is time for him to win the Champions League as well. I believe between the two competitions, he'd prioritise the Champions League. But right now, it's not a good look when your manager is looking a little bit rattled. Similar things have happened with Antonio Conte at Tottenham Hotspur. We saw what happened. We're seeing what happens there, where he's been a little bit on edge. But Pep Guardiola, we all know he's a brilliant manager. He's got enough to turn it around. And yeah, I think he's just waiting for that game at the Emirates. Not really the FA Cup game, but the game when Man City travel to Arsenal. Because if Arsenal do pick up a result there, boy oh boy, could it be a big turning point in this Premier League season and could actually be the win that leads Arsenal to win on the Premier League title. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, what you believe about Man City and Pep Guardiola. Do you think he's actually threatened by Mikel Arteta, or do you think it's just a little bit of mind games and Man City is still going to win the Premier League? As always, make sure you like the video down below, subscribe if you're new around here on my road to 2,000 subscribers. I've been Wifeable and I hope to see you all in my next video.